She was nervous but excited as she walked into the grand ballroom, the chandeliers casting sparkling light across the polished floors. Aaliyah Johnson had worked tirelessly to reach this point, invited to the gala as recognition for her achievements at the company. She knew the stakes of mingling in a room full of the city's wealthiest, but she carried herself with quiet confidence, her head held high, her smile calm and professional. The guests arrived in their finest attire, the conversations filled with polite laughter and the subtle hum of ambition and status. From the moment she stepped in, Aaliyah could feel the subtle tension of gazes sizing her up, the whispered comments barely audible over the music. She had anticipated judgment. She had prepared herself for scrutiny, but nothing could have prepared her for the sharpness in Victoria Langford's voice when their eyes met across the room. Victoria, the elegant and powerful wife of Charles Langford, exuded confidence and authority. She had made it her mission to maintain absolute control over her world, and anyone who threatened her perception of order drew her scrutiny. As Aaliyah moved gracefully from table to table, offering polite greetings and acknowledging familiar faces, she could feel Victoria's eyes following her, a piercing gaze that seemed to measure every gesture, every step. Aaliyah reminded herself to breathe, to stay calm, to keep the composure she had practiced countless times before. Before we continue, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Are you in New York, Los Angeles, or somewhere else around the world? We'd love to hear from you as we dive into this story. The evening began with elegant conversations about art, business ventures, and upcoming philanthropic events. Aaliyah's expertise and charm allowed her to contribute meaningfully, engaging in discussions about company strategy and recent trends in marketing. Some guests were impressed by her insight, her confidence in delivering thoughtful perspectives. But Victoria was not pleased. With a delicate smile that didn't reach her eyes, she approached Aaliyah under the guise of polite conversation. Every word dripped with subtle venom, every question a test of composure. "You must feel very proud to be here," Victoria said, her voice soft yet sharp, "though I imagine it can be intimidating for someone not used to this level of sophistication." Aaliyah responded politely, her tone steady, her posture unshaken. "It is an honor to be invited," she replied, "and I am grateful for the opportunity to learn from everyone here." The words were calm, but Victoria's expression tightened, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Victoria continued her subtle attacks throughout the evening, commenting on Aaliyah's attire, her accent, and the perceived informality of her manners, each remark designed to unsettle her and provoke a reaction. Aaliyah felt the weight of the room pressing down, yet she maintained her dignity, never raising her voice, never allowing herself to appear shaken. Guests around them began to notice the tension, the polite smiles masking discomfort, some shifting uneasily in their seats. The disparity between Victoria's polished cruelty and Aaliyah's composed resilience was stark. Small moments hinted at the growing unease, a murmur of disapproval here, a whispered comment there, the subtle glances of those who sensed the underlying injustice but weren't yet brave enough to intervene. Anna Lanford, Victoria's young daughter, watched quietly from a distance. Her eyes were wide with curiosity and empathy, noticing the discomfort her mother was causing, sensing the unfairness of the situation without fully understanding its complexities. The first signs of escalation came during the main course, when Aaliyah offered assistance to an elderly guest struggling with her wine glass. Victoria's criticism was immediate, her voice loud enough for a few tables to hear. "Really, Aaliyah? Are you sure you know the proper way to handle that? It's delicate work after all." The comment was pointed, dripping with superiority. Aaliyah's response was measured. "I am careful to ensure nothing spills or causes discomfort," she said softly, "and I apologize if it seems otherwise." The crowd around them remained silent, the awkwardness palpable. Victoria's satisfaction in making a scene was evident, yet it only fueled Aaliyah's determination to remain composed and professional. Each moment of subtle hostility served as a test of her resolve. The tension escalated further during a toast, when Victoria made a pointed remark about background and privilege, implying that some people simply did not belong at events like this. Aaliyah's response was calm yet firm. "Respect and dignity are not limited by background," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the table, drawing attention from nearby guests. Some nodded silently in approval. Others shifted uncomfortably, realizing the boldness and correctness of her words. Victoria's expression darkened, the mask of elegance faltering ever so slightly as she realized her control over the room was being challenged. The room seemed to hold its breath as the unspoken confrontation grew. The whispers spread subtly among the guests, the awareness of injustice beginning to ripple. Victoria, unaccustomed to public resistance, began to show signs of frustration, her movements sharper, her smile tightening. The gala, designed to display wealth, status, and influence, had become a stage for a different kind of power, the quiet, unyielding strength of Aaliyah's character. As the evening wore on, Victoria's attacks grew bolder, and the room responded with a mixture of curiosity, shock, and silent judgment. The guests were witnessing something extraordinary, a subtle battle of dignity versus arrogance unfolding in real time, where every gesture and word carried weight. Aaliyah maintained her calm, continuing to converse with others, offering polite smiles, answering questions thoughtfully, and providing insight where appropriate, never allowing Victoria's hostility to break her composure. And then the moment came when Victoria, unable to tolerate her sense of control slipping, made a deliberate public attempt to humiliate Aaliyah, questioning her presence in the room and suggesting she was out of place, attempting to provoke embarrassment. Aaliyah's response was immediate and steady. "I am here because of my work and my contributions, just as anyone else. I deserve to be treated with the same respect you expect for yourself." The words rang out clearly, and a hush fell over the tables. Guests paused, realizing the confrontation had escalated beyond casual social friction. Some eyes widened in admiration of Aaliyah's poise. Others shifted uncomfortably under the intensity of the moment. Victoria's attempt to assert dominance had backfired. The conversation had become a test of moral authority, one that Aaliyah was meeting with grace and clarity, exposing the arrogance and prejudice behind Victoria's behavior. Emma Langford, sensing the injustice unfolding, stepped closer, her small voice quietly asking, "Why is she being treated that way?" The question, simple and innocent, cut through the tension in the room, drawing attention to the unfairness that many had only subconsciously perceived. Charles Langford, watching from the side, had been observing the subtle cruelty his wife had displayed throughout the evening. He stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Victoria, I believe we should reconsider the way we are treating our guest." The words were quiet, yet they carried authority, shifting the balance in the room. The guests, now aware that the conflict had escalated to a moral reckoning, began to lean in, their attention fully on the exchange between Victoria, Aaliyah, and Charles. Aaliyah, feeling a surge of relief and support, stood tall, the strength she had cultivated over years of overcoming prejudice shining through. The gala had transformed from a showcase of wealth into a stage for integrity, courage, and the assertion of human dignity. Every guest could feel the shift, a collective recognition that the events unfolding were far more significant than appearances, more important than social hierarchy, more lasting than fleeting status. And yet, even in the midst of this moral victory, Aaliyah remained composed, her words measured, her tone unwavering. She understood the importance of remaining calm, of letting truth and character speak louder than anger or fear. The first part of this story closes on that moment of rising tension, where the room is fully attentive, the challenge of standing up against prejudice clear, and the audience left wondering how Victoria will respond and whether Charles will continue to support justice over social expectation. The stage is set for a confrontation that will change the lives of everyone in that room forever. The room fell silent as Victoria's expression hardened, her carefully cultivated composure starting to crack. She had expected at most mild discomfort, perhaps a few awkward glances, but never the unwavering confidence that radiated from Alia. The subtle power she had relied on throughout the evening, the social leverage she had believed unquestionable, was being challenged publicly, and she could feel it slipping through her fingers. Guests shifted in their seats, some exchanging discreet looks, sensing the tension, recognizing the injustice unfolding before them. Emma Langford, still standing at the edge of the crowd, watched her mother with wide, incredulous eyes, feeling instinctively that something was profoundly wrong. She had never seen cruelty in such a direct form before, and the contrast between Alia's calm dignity and her mother's hostility was stark. Charles Langford stepped closer, his presence commanding attention without raising his voice. "Victoria," he said firmly, "this behavior is unacceptable. Alia is our guest, and she deserves the same respect that every person in this room deserves. It is not a question of background or appearance, but of decency and fairness." The words hung in the air, deliberate and measured, yet carrying unmistakable authority. Victoria's lips tightened, her composure faltering further, and for the first time, she felt the uncertainty of the situation. Her attempts to dominate the narrative were being systematically dismantled by truth, by the evident competence and grace of the woman she had tried to humiliate. Alia, standing tall in her elegant dress, met Victoria's gaze without fear, her voice steady. "I have worked hard to be here tonight, to contribute and to be recognized for my efforts. I have done nothing to deserve humiliation, and I will not allow prejudice to diminish my dignity." The guests, previously silent observers, now felt the weight of the moment. Some shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, others nodded subtly, recognizing the courage in Alia's words. Whispers spread quietly, the moral clarity of the situation becoming undeniable. Victoria's anger surged, but it lacked direction. Her carefully constructed social armor could not protect her from the public scrutiny now focused entirely on her behavior. The humiliation she had intended for Alia had begun to reflect back onto herself. Charles continued, his voice unwavering. "This is a moment that defines who we are. Respect is not optional, and it is not a commodity that can be withheld based on prejudice. Alia has shown nothing but professionalism and grace, and she will be treated accordingly." Emma stepped closer to her father, her small voice breaking the tension. "Mom, why is she being treated like that? She's nice to everyone. She helps me when I need it." The innocent observation struck a chord, piercing through the layers of social posturing and arrogance. Guests felt the weight of her words, the simplicity and truth of a child's perspective, illuminating the injustice with clarity no one could ignore. Victoria's face flushed, realizing that her cruelty had not gone unnoticed, that even the youngest observer in the room recognized the wrongness of her actions. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words failed her, faltering under the moral pressure of the moment. Charles placed a gentle hand on Alia's shoulder, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of support and protection. "You have nothing to fear here. We see your worth, and we honor it. Tonight is not a time for humiliation, but for recognition of character," he said softly, yet his words carried throughout the room. The guests began to murmur in agreement, some stepping forward discreetly to acknowledge Alia, offering compliments and expressions of admiration for her composure and intelligence. Victoria, realizing the shift of power and perception, felt the full weight of isolation. Her attempts at control, her reliance on social status, and her prejudice had all failed in the face of undeniable integrity. The room, once a stage for her dominance, had become a reflection of her failure, and she could do nothing to reclaim it. Alia, though still processing the intensity of the confrontation, maintained her calm. She addressed the room with quiet confidence. "I do not seek to create conflict or draw attention, but I will not allow injustice or discrimination to define my experience. I am here because of my work, my dedication, and my merit. Her words, measured yet powerful, resonated with everyone present, leaving a lasting impression on the guests and illuminating the contrast between humility, competence, and entitlement. Charles turned to the attendees, his voice carrying authority and conviction. Let this evening be a reminder that character matters more than wealth, more than social standing, more than the superficial distinctions we often allow to divide us. Respect is earned through actions and integrity, and tonight, Aaliyah has demonstrated that in abundance. The guests reacted with quiet applause and nods of acknowledgement. Some approached Aaliyah to congratulate her, offering words of encouragement and future opportunities. Victoria, standing alone, felt the culmination of her efforts collapse around her. The pride she had built on manipulation and control was shattered, leaving her to confront the consequences of her actions. Emma, moving closer to Aaliyah, whispered, "I'm glad you're here. You've been so kind to me." The simple words carried profound weight, affirming the moral victory and highlighting the human connection that had transcended social barriers. Aaliyah smiled softly, feeling the support and recognition she had long deserved. The gala, once a venue designed to showcase wealth and power, had transformed into a testament to integrity, courage, and the enduring strength of character. Victoria's face, pale and tense, reflected the realization that the night had revealed truths beyond her control, that respect could not be commanded or purchased, and that her actions had consequences she could no longer deny. Charles, seeing the resolution of the conflict, guided the attention back to civility, ensuring the guests felt the balance restored. "Let this evening mark a change," he said, "a recognition of what truly matters. Let us honor those who embody dignity, courage, and respect." The guests, inspired and reflective, began to engage in conversations of substance, leaving behind the pretense and posturing that had dominated the early hours of the gala. Aaliyah, her heart full but her composure intact, realized the profound impact of standing firm in the face of prejudice. The validation she received was not simply social approval, but a recognition of the inherent worth and humanity that no wealth, status, or prejudice could diminish. Emma held Aaliyah's hand briefly, a gesture of trust and admiration, and Aaliyah knew that this evening had become more than just an event. It had become a defining moment of courage, integrity, and justice. Victoria, finally silent, could only watch as the respect and support for Aaliyah crystallized around her, realizing that her attempts at control had failed and that dignity and fairness could not be torn away. Aaliyah's journey that night served as a reminder to everyone present that standing up for what is right, even when faced with power and prejudice, leaves a mark far deeper and more lasting than wealth or social status ever could. By the end of the evening, the guests had departed with a new awareness of respect, equality, and the importance of moral courage. Aaliyah, though exhausted, felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her integrity and grace had prevailed. Charles quietly approached her, offering reassurance and gratitude for her poise, while Emma hugged her again, a small but powerful testament to the bonds that had been strengthened by this trial. The story closes with Aaliyah standing in the empty ballroom, the grandeur around her still shining, but her mind focused on the lesson of the night. That dignity, kindness, and courage define true strength, and that no social barrier, prejudice, or act of cruelty can ever diminish the value of a person who stands firmly in their own truth. And to all of you watching, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories of courage, justice, and the remarkable strength of ordinary people who stand up for what is right.